remember when I was really young and it was my first confession, and I stood there waiting in line, nervous about what I had to say. I mean, I was like 5th grade. I'm sure I didn't kill anyone, but I was scared nonetheless. And I finally got into the confessional. I opened the door and I sat there, and I just started sharing my kind of brokenness with the priest. And we were actually sitting face to face, and he stops. Literally, he gets up and he stops. I've never had that happen before. And he says, shh. And he looks me in the eye, and he gets really close, and he says, you're called for greatness. And then immediately, all I'm thinking is, ninja, cyborg, superhero. And then he stops me because I think he saw it in my eyes. I was kind of off. The kind of greatness he said he was talking about isn't just what I'm gonna do, it's who I'm called to be. And so this is the case. Deep down in my heart, deep down in all of our hearts, there's a desire for something that we're almost afraid to admit out loud. I mean, say it right now. I'm made for greatness. Don't you feel kind of arrogant? And again, it's not the greatness of the world, but it's something deeper. To become a great man, a great woman, someone who's willing to die for another, someone who's willing maybe even to live their life for another, man, that's great. We feel that life is preparing us for something. And it's almost like unless we find out what that plot is, our story is incomplete. And so here we're searching for a God who's an author of the greatest story ever told, and we're not meant to be boring characters. Our life isn't meant to be so boring that we seek sin to keep us entertained. We're meant for more. We're meant for joy, and we're meant for adventure. What we're meant for is greatness. Kevin, thank you for joining us on this show.
Thank you.
Growing up, we hear things like, you're called to be great. And we're kind of encouraged to aspire to it. But I always wonder if people really believe that. So tell me about your life. Is that something that you knew right away?
I've always had this extreme passion and desire for life. And so I've always had goals. I've always had this hunger. But I feel that it wasn't always in the right direction. It wasn't always aligned with God's purpose for me. And talking about greatness, I tell a lot of the youth I interact with nowadays that they are DFG, which is destined for greatness. And I tell them to look at their palms. Everybody has an M etched on them, which stands for miracle. And I really didn't understand my worth, my gifts, my abilities. I always thought that part of my purpose was going to be to help others and fulfill their purpose, that I didn't have my own. And I was just gonna be on the outside.
So tell me about you growing up. Were you a kid who just had plans? Did you have like outlines? Did you have a map of what you wanted to do with life?
I would say growing up, I always had dreams, but they weren't my own. They were always one of my parents' dreams for me, to go into business, or my aunt and uncle, just become very, very rich. It was always their standards, and I really didn't have that unique identity that I really could call my own.
So, just even at a young age, then, did you have any desire to be a hero? Did you want to be a police officer, a firefighter? Or were you just a kid, you just kind of accepted these other vocations, these other journeys?
I just kind of accepted being average, and on top of that, I really just I played the comparison game, and so everybody that I looked to, I saw, oh man, this person's so awesome at this talent or this skill, whether it was sports, whether it was music, whatever. And I just always kept telling myself, this untruth that I could never be as good. And so I wouldn't even start to pursue any of that.
So what would your parents describe you as, in high school?
They'd call me the great son. Just always doing my homework. I was a straight 4.0 student, valedictorian, hard worker. And, I did everything I could to please them, but really love for me growing up was based on performance. So if I performed, I was loved, and that's what really, I think, drove me. It wasn't my faith, it wasn't any of that. It was just the desire to have that sense of approval.
Yeah, isn't that the case for a lot of people, the need to keep earning it? And if we play that game, it never ends, does it?
No.
So what did you do then in high school, then into college? What were you pursuing?
Right, so I got done with high school, Southline High School in Southline, Michigan. and ended up going to the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, pretty close by. Got my degree in economics and Spanish, and again, was going towards the business world because that's what I was told was going to make me money, make me happy. And it was really just people pleasing because I knew that the close people in my life, my aunts, uncles, grandmother, etc., that they wanted that for me.
So did faith play a part in any of this? Were you raised Catholic?
I was raised Catholic. Yeah, I was an altar server. I went to Mass every Sunday. I did all the sacraments, but there was nothing deeper than that. It was all at the surface.
Now, did you find that faith, find yourself growing more distant in college?
Yeah, at the start. I definitely grew a lot more distant going to a public university. It's very hard to maintain your faith identity. Especially at U of M, where there's every culture, every religion, every ethnicity, etc., that to be able to just, keep that and, call it your own, it was really, really difficult.
So let me ask you a serious question. Were you happy?
No, I wasn't truly happy. I always come back to the 5-year-old back in kindergarten class that was asked the question, what do you want to be when you grow up? And he said happy. And it turned out that it was John Lennon of the Beatles. And his teacher said that he got the assignment wrong, and he said, no, I think I got it right. And that's what I wanted.
So you went through college, you got a job, you became successful, and you're not happy.
Right. I was making a lot of money. I had benefits. I had a cushy job.
You've just described what most people think
Right.
means to be successful,
Correct.
to be great.
Correct. And it's in the eye of the beholder. For some people it is money, and money's got to be part of the motivation. But if that's your only motivation for what you do, you'll never have enough of it to be happy. Because I kept getting the raises, kept getting the bonuses, but something was missing.
And do you think that was a way that God was maybe drawing something out of you?
Yeah, he was pulling at me. Really, I had gotten this 4-year degree, and I had gotten this full-time job, and it was kind of like, at this point, this is plan A, and I got to survive, I got to pay the bills, etc. So it was more like I got to start doing this. But at the same time, it was starting slowly but surely, this simultaneous push going towards my dream job, towards like what he had planned for me from the beginning.
So at that point in your life, would you have ever imagined you'd be where you are today?
No, not at all.
So what happened?
It was a number of things. It was different people starting to work in my life. It was, again, just getting real with who I was, with my faith journey, and understanding that call for greatness. And I never had anybody that believed in me to that level. And I never thought I could do something that was, so fulfilling. But as soon as I latched on to what I love doing, which is speaking and touching hearts and sharing my heart through music, through humor, through my faith, I was off and running.
So tell us, how did that happen? Because that seems like a big transition from working in the auto industry.
Right.
Now to speaking to audiences.
Right.
So what happened?
Well, I go back to 2006 was probably the turning point for me. I went to a workshop that was a faith-based workshop, and there was 50 people there, 25 men, 25 women, total strangers. And the two leaders over a 3-day period made us get so real and lower our water lines so low that I was closer with these 50 strangers after 3 days than I was with my entire family. And I started finally taking a step back and saying, is where I'm at where I want to be with my life? And when I started asking that question, not necessarily what I want to do, but who I want to be for this planet, then I started to look for career paths that were going to foster that.
Now, did you have a lot of people in your life who were supportive of this?
Not at first.
Yeah.
Not at first. I had my parents, when I started telling them, what I want to do with the rest of my life, that I wanted to speak, 21 questions came up, how are you going to make money? How are you going to support yourself? This, and that. And people in my life that said, that it's just impossible. But now they're some of my biggest supporters.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So what were the kind of steps or what was the door that started opening up?
Right. It was kind of like a pinball machine. I got in touch with this person, this speaker that was already in the industry, and he's been my mentor since '06. And he led me to this person. He led me to this opportunity. I started to come back to my old high school, just speaking to classroom to classroom to classroom. And eventually I had a full school assembly, and then other schools started hearing about me. And then, it just kind of spiraled from there.
Now, they call you Mr. Peace, so I'm
Right.
assuming that's your message.
It's full of peace. It's a message of love and compassion and hope. And that's what I really try to instill in all the hearts and lives that I get an opportunity to interact with.
So share with me maybe like some of your memorable experiences.
It's one of those things that when you get in front of a school where there's 2,000 people out in the auditorium and you got 45 minutes with them, it's kind of surreal, because I never saw myself there from the start, but I did, I looked back at some of the goals that I wrote down from the beginning, and I said I was going to be speaking to crowds of 2,000 or more. And this is like back in 2006. And to now see it come into fruition in 2012, 13, 14, it's just like a state of just ecstasy, really, that God has done such amazing work through me, his imperfect instrument. The real transition period for me, I remember, and I was 22 years old, and I sat down with my mom and dad at the table. And this is the first time I consciously told my dad that I loved him. And I remember his first question was, "What do you want?" And he looked over at my mom and he asked if I was on something like, some type of substance, because it was just so new to him. And I don't come from that family where it's huggy-touchy and, you share your feelings. But I just kept repeating it over and over and over again. And I kept looking in his eyes and saying, "I love you." And he finally got it. And he finally realized that this was on my heart. It was so heavy, and that he said that I had to do this, because where he left off with his life, my mom too, I asked them that, "What do you want to be, or what do you want to do?" But what did you want to be? And both of them wanted to do something other than what they did for 35 years of their life. He wanted to be an artist, she wanted to be a teacher, and they ended up working for an insurance company. And so the idea is that if you have that opportunity and that time, whether it's 13, 14, the whole goal is that it's not when you find that purpose and calling, but that you find it, during your time on earth, and that you start to just pursue it with this reckless abandon.
One of my favorite stories is Lord of the Rings. And when you go back into the Lord of the Rings and you arrive at the story of the Hobbit, the first adventures of Bilbo Baggins, this kind of comfortable character who doesn't really want to do anything but enjoy life. He's approached by this great wizard who invites him to share an adventure. And Bilbo feels this tug towards something unknown, and this other tug towards comfort. Bilbo asks a question before he makes a decision. He says, "Will I be safe? And will you promise me that I'll come home?" And Gandalf says, "I can't promise you that. So no. And if you do come home, you won't be the same." And that's it. Are you ready to take a risk that can change everything?
Did you like the program you just watched? Help Shalom World bring more programs like this to a global audience. Your support helps us share the peace of Christ with the world. Visit shalomworld.org/donate.
There's a battle for my heart, and it's kind of between comfort and something else. And in the world is all about comfort. And it's so easy because it requires almost nothing of me. I just kind of have to follow my weakest desires, like a find comfort. But on the other hand, there's this other battle. There's a tug that says, you got to follow me this way. And if you follow me this way, that road leads to greatness. And that requires everything of me, which means that it's a risk. It's a risk that if I take a step towards that road, what if I never make it? But Jesus identifies our desire, and he calls us to greatness. So let's join Kevin and see how the battle plays out in his life. I think there were generations ago where people don't have that choice. A lot of people just had to find a job to support family, but it's their sacrifice that gives people like us that opportunity,
That's
right? To be able to take a step off of what I have to do to what I'm really meant to do.
Right.
So your relationship with your parents, what's that like now?
They're some of my biggest supporters, and it's so cool to, because I was at that point that at first I didn't have that. And I kind of said, look, I mean, they're my blood, and I would love to have you guys in my corner, but I have to do this for myself, and I know that I do this for my Savior. And so I started going without that initial support, but now it came back around full circle, and I can never fault them because they did what they thought was best with the tools they had and what they thought was best for our family at that time. But just again, it just means so much more when you have your family in your corner and backing you every step of the way.
Exactly what family's supposed to be about.
That's right.
So any other relationships in your life that kind of come out of this now?
Yeah, it was one of these things that any previous relationship that I had, with a female was always superficial. We never got past like the surface. It was like that, putting on that mask and putting on that first impression and just staying with that. Until finally, when things were getting a little more serious, that came off and you thought that the person changed. When in reality, you should have just been who you were from the beginning. I mean, the only person that you have to impress is God. And understanding that now, and the relationship that I'm currently in, now over 3 years and going towards marriage, it's just so awesome because I have this mutual support and this mutual understanding, and this person that's right alongside of me with my faith journey, growing in spirit together, and really just it's so crucial to have somebody that's going to be real with you too.
I just have a question. So
Sure.
if you do get married to her,
Yeah.
she can be called Mrs. Peace?
They already call her that sometimes, Miss Peace, and she thinks it's funny. And it's actually kind of really funny too, because she's someone that she won't speak in front of 5 people, and I'm like speaking to like big crowds. She's very nervous, but it's kind of like the opposites attract, and she's just a humble being, humble person, and pure heart.
So my question to you is, who are your heroes? And I think a lot of people have heroes like athletes who do great things on the court, but they're not heroes because of who they are, it's what they do.
Sure.
So who are people in your life that really inspire you?
I mean, I think a lot of people, they're in love with the idea of somebody, and when it comes to athletes or celebrities, it's like, oh, I love that person, but you've probably never met them and maybe never will. And so the heroes are the everyday people. It's a teacher that believed in me. It's that person back in 2006 at that workshop that told me that I was already the speaker and leader that I wanted to be. It's my parents. It's my speaking mentor, who's talked all over the world and gotten so vulnerable to just impact so many youth's lives, that the people that have that true impression on you, on your soul, are the ones that you're going to remember their name, and you're going to remember that time that they were with you and they, beyond any shadow of a doubt, prayed with you and were just there to support you unlike any other.
So did you find this whole process of talents that you already had, and you find joy when you actually get to use them?
Oh yes. I tell the youth that when I speak to them that I'm 110% alive when I'm on stage. And I know that that's where God wants me to be, because I'm so happy and I'm so full of joy. I understand that every fiber of my being is completely alive. And so this is right.
Yeah, I mean, God is the author of life, and you know what life feels like.
Right.
So how does that transition the rest of your life? Is that what you now do full-time?
I do full-time. So right now I'm a youth minister at St. James, Novi, Michigan. I work with the middle and high school youth and the young adults. And on top of that, I do school assemblies, and that's across the Midwest. And I speak to schools, kindergarten through 12th grade, private and public schools. And I share that message of peace, and trying to give them that same type of passion and drive that people like us have.
So now that you're on the path that God wants you to be on, what's your relationship with Him like?
It gets strengthened every day, because there are hurdles that continue to come into play. And I know that it's the devil and the evil spirits, trying to bring us down.
Yeah, I mean, they call you Mr. Peace, but life can't always be that way, right?
No, and it's one of those things that I always preach, that despite all the chaos that's around you, because there's always going to be that noise and violence and trouble, but despite all that, you still have that inner sense of tranquility, and you still stay so grounded, so centered in who you are and your faith, and as a child of the Most High, that whatever comes at you, you're not as affected as you would be without that foundation.
Yeah. And so what would you say to someone who whether they're in a job that they're not really called to do, whether they're just living off the acceptance and approval and affirmation of others, what would you say to people out there?
It's never too late. You know, I was at a point in my life that I didn't have a lot of financial obligations yet. I didn't have a family, I didn't have a house, all those things. And so now, you know, somebody that's a little bit further into the game, yeah, I mean, it's going to be harder to transition, but it's still possible. And if it's making you, you know, just tense up on the drive into work, I mean, that's what was happening for me. Every Monday, you know, I just would dread going back into the office, and you couldn't pay me enough to just get into this toxic environment. And if that's the type of environment you're in, then you got to start taking steps, even if it's just every day, you know, one baby step that's starting to go towards, you know, God's purpose for you. I mean, you can't put a price tag on passion.
Man, awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Kevin, for sharing
Yes.
your story with us, for kind of reminding us that we're all called to greatness.
Thank you.
Can you dream bigger than God? Could he possibly want more for your life than you do? See, Jesus wants you to enjoy life, but he wants more than that. He wants you to be in joy itself. God, the source of all joy, wants to put joy like a fire into your heart so that you have one desire. And then when you're seeking, you realize suddenly that what you've always been after is what God has always been after, that his one desire is yours, which is greatness. So remember, seek and you shall find.
You're my one desire, you're my one